Snow was falling like silent ashes from a broken sky. The forest was dark, empty, and cruel that night. The cold wind cut through the trees and howled like a lost beast. He walked alone on the narrow path, boots sinking deep into the snow. His coat was old and heavy, and his breath came out in white clouds. He had taken this walk many times before, but tonight felt different. Something in the air was wrong. Something unseen was watching. He stopped. The world had gone too quiet. Even the wind had paused, holding its breath. He turned his head slowly and saw a faint blue glow between the trees. It was soft, weak, like a dying star hiding behind the branches. His heart jumped. No lantern burned that color. No animal glowed like that. Every part of him wanted to run, but something deeper, quieter, made him take one step forward, then another, then another. As he drew closer, he saw her. She was lying against a broken tree, half buried in snow. Her body was curled tightly as if she were trying to disappear into herself. Her skin was pale blue, almost silver in the moonlight. Strange markings like tiny stars covered her arms. Her eyes were closed, lips trembling as she breathed in shallow gasps. She looked fragile, like thin glass about to break. Snow had gathered on her hair and frost had formed on her lashes. He froze. She was not human. His mind screamed danger. Stories of strange beings from the sky filled his memory. Stories of fire, death, and destruction. He should walk away. He should run home and lock his door. But his feet would not move. Instead, he knelt beside her. Her body was ice cold, colder than the snow around her. When he touched her shoulder gently, she did not wake. Her breathing was faint, almost silent. She was dying. Right here, right now, in the middle of this lonely winter forest. His hands shook as he pulled off the thick wool blanket from his pack. He wrapped it around her carefully as if she might shatter. The fabric swallowed her small frame. For a moment, nothing changed. Then he heard it, a soft, broken sound from her lips. A whisper, almost too faint to be real. Warm. That one word broke through the walls around his heart. He knew then he could not leave her. She was not a monster. She was not an enemy. She was a life fading away in the cold, and he was the only one here to see it. The snow fell harder now, covering the ground like a white ocean. He had to move fast. He slipped his arms under her and lifted her from the snow. She was lighter than he expected, as if her bones were hollow. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel the weak beat of her heart, like a bird trapped under ice. He stumbled through the forest, fighting the wind that tried to push him back. His cabin was far too far, but he did not stop. The cold bit into his skin, but he kept moving. Each step was a battle, each breath a knife in his lungs, but he carried her as if the whole world depended on it. The forest was silent again, but this silence felt different now. Not empty, not cruel. It felt like the world itself was watching him carry this dying star through the darkness. At last, through the curtain of snow, he saw the faint outline of his cabin. Relief hit him like a wave. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The room was dark and cold, but it was shelter. It was life. He placed her gently on the rug near the fireplace. Her skin was still ice cold. He threw wood into the empty hearth and struck a match with shaking hands. The fire caught slowly, then roared to life, filling the room with golden light. Shadows danced across the walls. He pulled the blanket tighter around her and sat close, feeding the flames. She lay still, her chest rising and falling in slow, weak breaths. Her glowing skin shimmered faintly in the firelight. He watched her, unsure if she would make it through the night. He did not know who she was, where she came from, or if she would even live to speak again. But as he sat there, the fire warming his face, he realized something strange. He wanted her to live. More than anything, he wanted her to open her eyes again. Outside, the storm howled across the forest. Inside, he waited. The night stretched on, silent except for the crackle of flames and the soft, fragile sound of her breathing. And there, on that frozen night in the heart of the forest, a human man sat beside a dying alien widow, and unknowingly began the story that would change both their lives forever. The fire burned bright through the night, chasing away the icy breath of the storm outside. He sat near the hearth, arms wrapped around his knees, watching her like a man guarding a fragile secret. The cabin was small and silent. Only the soft crackle of flames and the occasional moan of the wind broke the stillness. She had not moved for hours. Her breathing came slow, deep now, not broken like before. The blue glow of her skin had grown a little stronger, like hidden starlight flickering under the surface. Her hair, once stiff with frost, now lay loose and damp across the blanket. He told himself she was safe now, but he still could not sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he imagined waking to find her gone, vanished like a dream, or worse, lifeless and cold. So he stayed awake, feeding the fire, keeping watch over this strange being who had fallen into his world. When morning came, pale and weak through the frosted window, he was still there. His back ached from the wooden floor. His eyelids hung heavy, but when he saw her fingers twitch, his exhaustion vanished like smoke. Her eyes opened. They were not like human eyes. There were no whites, only swirling rings of silver and violet, like deep galaxies trapped in crystal. For a moment she only stared at the ceiling, unfocused, as if trying to remember what life was. Then her gaze slid to him. He froze. She saw him. She blinked once, slow and uncertain, then pulled the blanket tighter around her thin frame. Her voice, when it came, was rough and soft at once, like dry leaves brushing stone. "Where am I?" "In my cabin," he said carefully. "You were in the forest. You were freezing." Her brow furrowed. She touched her chest as if to check her heartbeat, then whispered, "You saved me." He nodded. He didn't know what else to say. Words felt clumsy in his mouth. She was real and alive and watching him, and that was enough to steal every thought from his head. She tried to sit up, but her body shook. He caught her shoulder gently and lowered her back to the rug. "Don't move yet," he said. "You're weak. Rest." Her eyes narrowed at the touch, not with anger but with confusion, like she had forgotten what kindness felt like. Slowly she relaxed again into the blanket. He stood and moved to the kitchen corner, searching his shelves. After a moment, he poured hot water into a dented metal cup and mixed in honey. It wasn't much, but it was warm. He returned to her side and held out the cup. She stared at it for a long moment before taking it with trembling fingers. She sniffed it, frowned, then took a cautious sip. Her eyes widened slightly. The heat seemed to melt some invisible layer of frost inside her. She drank more, slow but steady, until the cup was empty. Then she handed it back and whispered, "Warm." The same word she had spoken in the forest. It struck him like an echo from another life. "You should eat too," he said, trying to sound calm. "But I don't know what you can eat." She tilted her head. "Food," she repeated quietly, as if testing the word. "I will try." He made a simple broth from dried vegetables and soft bread. The smell filled the cabin, warm and alive. She sat propped against the wall, watching the steam rise as if it were magic. When he offered her the bowl, she hesitated only a moment before dipping her fingers in to taste. Then she took a slow, small bite. Her lips curved just slightly. It wasn't quite a smile, but close enough to make his heart stumble. They ate in silence. She moved carefully, every gesture cautious, like a wild creature who expected the world to strike. He spoke little, not wanting to scare her away with sound. When she finished, she set the bowl down and wrapped the blanket around herself again. The firelight painted her face in gold and orange. She looked both breakable and eternal, like something carved from glass and starlight. "You are human," she said at last. "Yes." Her silver eyes studied him as if weighing the meaning of the word. "Humans destroy. Kill." Her voice was not angry, only tired, like a truth worn smooth by grief. "Some do," he said quietly, "but not all." She did not answer. Instead, she stared at the fire until her eyes began to droop. Within minutes, she was asleep again, her breathing deep and even. He sat back and exhaled slowly. The tension in his chest loosened just a little. She was safe, alive, and for now she trusted him enough to sleep in his home. Outside, the storm had ended. The sun broke weakly through the clouds, turning the snow to silver. He stood at the window watching the quiet world, and knew life had changed forever. There was an alien widow sleeping in his cabin, and for reasons he could not explain, he wanted her to stay. Days passed slowly inside the little cabin, each one wrapped in the hush of winter. The storm outside faded, but inside a new kind of quiet grew between them, not cold or empty, but gentle. She no longer lay trembling near the fire. She could sit up now, walk a few steps, even open the door to watch the snow fall. Yet she still spoke very little. He didn't push her. He knew what silence meant. It was the weight of memories too heavy to carry out loud, so he let her speak in small pieces, like broken shards of glass slowly fitting back into a hole. At first it came in single words, Home? Gone. War. He listened, never asking, only waiting. Then one night, as they sat together near the fire, she began to talk. Her voice was soft, like the crackle of dry leaves. My world was green, she whispered. Sky like silver mist. Rivers that sang when the winds danced. My people built our homes in the arms of living trees. We called them heartwood. Her silver eyes stared into the flames as if they were distant stars. I had a mate, she said. His name? Rafe. He laughed like sunlight. He would wrap me in his wings when the night was cold. A fragile smile touched her lips, but it vanished like smoke. And I had a child, small, bright, so bright. She sang before she could speak. He stayed still, afraid that even the sound of his breath might shatter her words. Then the ships came, she continued, voice cracking, black ships with fire in their bellies. They burned the skies. They poisoned the rivers. We ran, but fire runs faster. Her hands shook. He gently pushed the bowl of soup closer, but she didn't see it. Raif fought. He told me to run. He kissed our daughter's head and pushed us into the forest. Her breath hitched. The ground broke. The trees fell. I ran. I ran until my heart tore, but when I turned, the fire had taken them both. She stopped speaking. Her eyes glimmered like moonlight on water. Not tears, her kind did not weep like humans, but something inside her shimmered, cracked and hollow. I searched, she whispered. Through the ruins, through the ashes. For days, weeks, months, I found nothing, no song, no breath. She wrapped her arms around herself as if she were made of smoke. Then I wandered, across dead worlds, across frozen skies, until the stars turned strange, and I fell. She looked at him then, her gaze heavy and ancient. I wanted the cold to take me. The forest was quiet. I thought, this is where it ends. His throat felt tight. He had no words big enough to hold the grief she had carried across the stars. She had been a mother, a mate, a soul full of music, and now she was only a shadow wrapped in a borrowed blanket. But somehow she was still alive. You're safe here, he said quietly. No one will hurt you. Her eyes searched his face like she was trying to see if he meant it, if any world could be safe again. After a long moment, she whispered, Why? He blinked. Why what? Why save me? He didn't know how to answer. Because he couldn't walk away. Because something about her broken shape had cut through his heart like lightning. Because she wasn't just an alien. She was someone who had lost everything and still breathed. Instead, he said, because no one should die alone. Her gaze softened, just barely. For the first time, she didn't look like she was drifting away. She looked like she might stay. That night, she didn't sleep near the door. She moved her bedding closer to the fire, closer to him, and when she curled up beneath the blanket, her glowing skin reflected in the golden light. He felt something strange stir inside him, something warm and painful all at once. It was the first ember of trust. And maybe, he thought as the fire faded to soft red coals, the first faint spark of something even deeper, something neither of them yet dared to name. The winter days grew softer, like the world itself was holding its breath. Snow still lay thick around the cabin, but inside, the air had changed. The silence between them no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like peace. She walked more now, her steps light and soundless across the wooden floor. The blanket he had wrapped around her the first night had become her cloak, draped over her thin shoulders like a piece of starlight. He had given her one of his old shirts, too. It was far too large, but she wore it like armor. She watched everything. The way he chopped wood outside. The way he boiled water. The way he hummed soft, broken tunes while fixing the roof beams. She didn't speak much, but her eyes followed him with quiet curiosity, like she was slowly learning the shape of his world. And he watched her, too. Sometimes he caught himself staring when she stood by the window, her silver eyes glowing faintly as the snowlight danced on her skin. She looked like a piece of another universe trapped inside his small human home. Fragile, beautiful, impossible. They spoke more now, short words at first, simple ones. Cold, she would say, and he would add wood to the fire. Hungry, she would whisper, and he would cook. Thank you, she said one evening, and it was the first time he heard her voice carry warmth. That word stayed in his chest long after she fell asleep. One evening, as the sun sank behind the trees, painting the snow in gold and blood orange, He brought out a small box from a high shelf. Inside were old treasures from a life he rarely thought about. A broken compass, a rusted locket, a cracked photograph. She watched as he set them on the table. "These are from your past," she said softly. "Yes," he replied. "Things I kept. Things I couldn't let go." She touched the photograph gently. "Who?" "My sister," he said. "She died. Long ago," her eyes lowered. "Loss stays." "Yes," he said. "It stays." They sat in silence, two different souls bound by the same invisible thread. Grief. Then, without looking up, she said, "I sang to my child every night." Her voice was almost a whisper, but it carried like a song across the quiet room. She had trouble sleeping. She would curl her tail around my arm and I would hum until her eyes closed. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "What did you sing?" She hesitated, then began to hum. It was low and strange, with notes that bent like silver smoke. The sound seemed to curl around the cabin walls, wrapping them in something soft and ancient. It didn't belong to this world, yet it made the air feel safe, like the storm could never touch them here. He listened, frozen, afraid to even breathe. When she stopped, the silence was so deep it almost rang. She blinked, like waking from a dream, and looked at him. "Your heart is loud," she said softly. He laughed, quiet, unsure, but real. "I guess it is." Her lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile, but closer than before. After that, they found small ways to fill the days together. They played with words, teaching each other their languages. She pointed at objects, fire, table, sky, and repeated them until they stuck. Sometimes she would say them wrong on purpose, and he would laugh, and she would tilt her head, pretending not to understand why it was funny. At night, they sat close to the fire, talking in fragments. She would ask strange questions like, "Do human hearts always beat this fast?" Or, "Why do you close your eyes when you smile?" And he would answer, even when he didn't fully know. Sometimes their hands brushed when passing things. Sometimes their shoulders touched when they both leaned close to the fire, and each time silence would bloom between them, heavy, warm, and trembling. He tried to tell himself it was nothing. She was alien. He was human. They were just two lonely souls surviving winter. But one night, as she rested her head against the back of the chair, firelight dancing across her silver eyes, he realized something terrifying. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was healing, and so was he. As the last logs burned low, she pulled the blanket tighter and curled closer to the hearth. "Your world is quiet," she murmured, half asleep. "Only when I'm alone," he replied softly. Her eyes fluttered open just enough to meet his. There was something in her gaze now that hadn't been there before, a fragile spark like dawn touching the edge of night. Then, "Not alone," she whispered. And with that she drifted to sleep, wrapped in firelight and borrowed warmth. He sat awake long after, staring at the soft rise and fall of her breathing. Something inside his chest had shifted, something slow and gentle and dangerous. The walls he had built around his heart were melting, just like hers. The days grew longer. The snow softened, melting into silver streams that trickled down the hills. Inside the cabin, their quiet world had begun to feel like a dream, fragile and perfect, hidden from everything cruel. But dreams never last. It began with shadows in the distance. One afternoon, as he was chopping wood behind the cabin, he felt it, the strange prickle on the back of his neck, the silent weight of eyes. He turned sharply, axe in hand, but saw only the edge of the forest. Still, something moved there. A flicker of color between the trees, a figure that vanished the second he blinked. That night, while she was humming softly near the fire, he stepped outside. Cold wind bit at his face. He walked the perimeter of the cabin, every nerve alert. Snow crunched under his boots, and there it was, a set of fresh footprints in the slush, leading up to the window and back again. His stomach went cold. They were not his, and they were not hers. The next day, he caught sight of them, 3 villagers from the nearby settlement standing far off at the tree line. They watched silently, their faces pale and tight. When they noticed him looking, they turned and left without a word. By evening, whispers began. He could hear them faintly when he went into the village for supplies. Hushed voices behind closed doors. Glances that slid away when he met them. The words were always the same. Strange, odd, unnatural, not safe. He kept his eyes down and walked home quickly, heart pounding like he was carrying something fragile and forbidden in his chest. That night, as they sat together by the fire, he tried to hide his unease, but she noticed anyway. "You are restless," she said softly. "Just tired," he lied. Her silver eyes searched his face. "They have seen me," he froze. "You knew?" "I felt it," she whispered. "Fear has weight." He sighed and rubbed his face. "They don't understand. They think you're dangerous," she lowered her gaze. "Perhaps they are not wrong." He looked at her sharply. "No, you've hurt no one." "I have." "Survived," she said, voice hollow. "Survivors can be dangerous," he wanted to argue, but words tangled in his throat. She stared into the fire, the flames painting her cheeks in golden shadow. She looked small, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Yet there was something in her posture, like someone bracing for a blow they know is coming. The blow came the next evening. It started as shouting outside the cabin, sharp and angry in the cold air. He rushed to the door, heart hammering. 3 men stood in the snow, faces hard. One held a torch. "We know what you've got in there," the tallest one said. "We saw it. That thing. It's not human." "She's not a thing," he said firmly, stepping outside and shutting the door behind him. "She's dangerous," the man spat. "If the council hears, they'll burn this place to the ground." "She's done nothing. She's alien," another hissed. "That's enough." The torchlight flickered across their tight jaws, their clenched fists. Fear shone in their eyes, sharp and cold as the snow, fear that turned men cruel. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low. "She's under my roof. That means she's under my protection." Silence stretched. Snowflakes drifted between them like falling stars. "Keep her hidden," the tall one said at last, "or we'll come back. And next time we won't just talk." They turned and vanished into the trees. He stood there for a long time after, his breath fogging the cold air, torchlight fading behind the pines. The snow was silent again, but it was no longer peaceful. It was waiting. When he finally stepped back inside, she was standing near the fire, still and silent. She had heard everything. "They will come," she said simply. "Maybe not," he replied, though he didn't believe it. "They will," she said. "Fear always comes back." He walked to her slowly and placed his hand on her shoulder. Her skin was cool, faintly glowing under his rough fingers. "Then we face it together." Her eyes lifted to his. There was no fear in them now, only sorrow and something deeper, like quiet fire. "Together," she whispered. And for the first time since she had arrived, she stepped close and rested her forehead lightly against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her without thinking, holding her as if the world might break at any second. Outside, the forest slept under the pale moonlight. Inside, 2 souls from different worlds stood in the glow of the fire, hearts pressed close, knowing the world beyond their walls was turning against them. And yet, for the first time, they were not afraid to be seen, at least by each other. The next days passed like the fragile space between heartbeats, slow, careful, and trembling. The world outside the cabin stayed quiet, but not with peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. He felt it in the way the wind paused too long, in the way birds no longer sang near the trees, and in the way she began to watch the windows whenever shadows moved. She said nothing of fear, but he could see it. The stiff way her shoulders rose at night, the way her eyes flickered toward the door when the floor creaked. She had lost everything once. She expected the world to take what little she had left again. He could not let that happen, so he stayed close. He repaired the cabin walls, set traps farther out in the woods, sharpened his axe more than needed. He moved like a man guarding something precious. Though he never said it aloud, she saw it anyway. One night, as the moon spilled silver across the floorboards, she spoke while he tended the fire. "They will return," she said softly. He didn't look up. "Then let them. They will not understand," she continued. "They will not see me, as you do." He turned, firelight painting half his face gold, the other half shadow. "Then they don't deserve to see you at all." She blinked, startled, as if no one had ever spoken for her before. He crossed the room slowly and crouched in front of her. "Listen, if they come, I will stand in front of you again, as many times as it takes." Her eyes shone like twin stars caught in tears she would never cry. "Why?" she whispered. He swallowed, words heavy in his chest. "Because you are not just someone I saved anymore." Silence settled like snow between them. Then slowly she lifted her hand and placed it over his heart. His breath caught. Her skin was cool, but her touch burned through him. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Your heart beats so loud." He covered her hand with his. "It beats for you." They stayed like that for a long time, still and silent, hearts talking in a language older than words. Later that night, the wind rose outside, sharp and wild. She startled and drew closer to him without thinking. He wrapped the blanket around them both, pulling her against his chest. Her body was small, almost weightless, yet he had never held anything that felt heavier with meaning. Her silver eyes glowed faintly against his shirt. "In my world," she murmured, "bonding is sacred. When we choose for all our days, our souls. Join." He tightened his arms around her. "Humans don't say it like that." "But yes, we choose too." She tilted her head to look up at him. "Then will you choose?" His heart slammed like thunder. There were 1,000 reasons to say no. She was alien. He was human. The world would never understand. Their lives were built from opposite stars, but all he saw was her. Soft, fierce, broken, glowing, and how somehow she had become the center of his silent world. "Yes," he said. She closed her eyes and breathed out like she had been holding that air since the war. Her hand rested on his chest and her lips curved into the smallest, truest smile he had ever seen. Then, "I choose too." The storm screamed outside, rattling the windows. Inside, they sat wrapped in the same blanket, sharing quiet warmth. It was not desire that filled the space between them, but something older and deeper, trust. She laid her head on his shoulder. "If they come," she said, voice like falling snow, "we run together. Or we stand together," he answered. "Together," she echoed. And something inside both of them clicked into place, like two broken pieces of different worlds finally fitting as one. He had saved her from dying. Now she was saving him from being alone. That night, for the first time, they did not sleep apart. They lay side by the fire, their hands joined between them, hearts beating in quiet rhythm. No words, no fear, only the steady breath of two souls who had chosen each other. Outside, the wind howled like an angry god. Inside, the world had gone still. Because they had stopped being two, they had become one. Spring crept gently through the forest, soft as a whispered promise. The heavy snows melted into glittering streams and the trees began to wear thin crowns of green. Birds returned, their songs breaking the long winter silence. The world outside the cabin was waking again. Inside, a different kind of life had bloomed. She no longer wrapped herself in fear like armor. She moved easily now, barefoot across the creaking floor, humming low songs from her lost world while sunlight danced on her silver skin. Her laughter, soft, surprised, almost shy, sometimes filled the air, and it startled him every time like seeing a flower grow from stone. He smiled more too. The lines of worry on his face had softened. He spoke to her in small, simple words as they worked side by side, mending the roof, planting early seeds behind the cabin, drying herbs by the fire. They had built a rhythm, a life stitched together from scraps of two broken worlds, and somehow it felt whole, but not everyone forgot. Sometimes when he walked into the distant village for salt or nails, he still saw the looks, the fear, the suspicion. The memory of that night with the torch had not faded from their eyes. They no longer spoke threats, but they did not speak kindness either. It didn't matter. He always returned to the cabin before the sun fell, and when he opened the door and saw her waiting there, silver eyes glowing, blanket around her shoulders, smile faint and real, every cold look from the outside world turned to nothing. They had chosen each other. That was enough. One evening, as the last light of day sank behind the trees, they sat on the cabin's front step. The air was warm for the first time in months. The forest smelled of earth instead of snow. She leaned against him quietly, watching the first fireflies spark between the trees. "In my world," she said softly, "spring was when we sang our vows." He turned to her. "Vows? Our bond rights," she explained. "We would stand under the heartwood trees. We would speak our names. Then we would share one breath, and it would join our souls." He smiled gently. "Sounds beautiful." "It was," she whispered. "It meant, I will carry your heart when you can't." He looked at her glowing eyes, at the soft curve of her mouth, at the faint scars like starlight across her skin. And he knew, without words, without reason, that he already carried her heart. And she carried his. "Then let's do it," he said quietly. She blinked, startled. "Here?" "Here," he said. "This is our heartwood." They stood beneath the tallest pine, where the moonlight spilled across the clearing like liquid silver. The forest held its breath as they faced each other. He spoke first. "My name is Elias. I was alone. Until I found you." She stepped closer, silver eyes bright. "My name is Selai. I was broken. Until you held me." They breathed together, slow and deep, their foreheads touching. His human heart thundered. Her glowing skin warmed against his chest. And in that single shared breath, something invisible shifted, like two halves of a star locking back into place. It was not a wedding, not a ritual, not anything the world would understand. But it was real, and it was forever. That night they lay together on the bed for the first time, not from fear, not from duty, but from love. The fire burned low, painting their faces in gold and shadow. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. His hand rested over her glowing heart. No words were needed. Their hearts had already spoken. Outside, the wind carried the first warm rains through the forest. Inside, they slept in each other's arms, safe at last, whole at last. She had come to this world ready to die. He had found her ready to fade, but together they had created something neither had dared to imagine. A love strong enough to survive the cold. A love strong enough to cross stars. A love beyond worlds.